$41,000. Yes. Today I'm up $41,000 day trading the NASDAQ and the S&P. Today I'll be covering my bias development, how I was able to adjust, and my trades. Let's get into it. So today was pretty eventful. Had a plethora amount of trades with my community. And first things first, the first thing I want to overlay is my bias. And so if you look into the Discord channel, the first thing I want to do is go into yesterday actually and kind of talk about yesterday initially. So let's do that. So if we were to look at yesterday and our bias coming into the open, I pretty much said this. Coming into the open, we had seen overnight price come down higher time frame levels and take them out. 2 key swing points, blah, blah, blah. NQ seems to be the more aggressive off the opening range move. So for now, it's leading. If we see trade past the new week opening gap, no reason not to believe in higher draw. If the opening range move gets eaten by the sell back down, can look to flip. I want you guys to take a look at this last sentence here. So if you guys watched yesterday's review, you understand that yesterday I was pretty bullish. Reason being, we had bullish SMT off NQ and ES, and we had also seen ES take out its sell side off the hourly time frame. Now, what had happened overnight is we had seen price overnight essentially sell that back down, just like we talked about here. If you look at the hourly on ES here, what you could see price do and what it did is see a significant sell-off back down into its arrays and essentially eating up what we had already done, which is buy up off the low. And so once we reclaim back below this low here, once we had seen price kind of dismiss the buyback up here after taking an area of liquidity, which was pretty nice, my buy set back down to bearish. We were already bearish coming into the move yesterday, and we had seen overnight price essentially build off a low. And for me specifically, I, again, went back to being bearish here because we had seen the overnight session be so bearish. We had seen such an aggressive move back down. So for a session and me being bullish yesterday, for us to take out a high, come back down and completely disregard, A, the low that we ended up taking out on ES, which prone reversal initially, and B, completely disregard our hourly bullish SMT, that told me that price didn't really have interest in a long-term reversal through, say, days and weeks of the market. So for me coming into the open, the initial bias was bearish, and I wanted to see the opening range movement, how we would deliver. And clearly off the opening range move, we see a bearish sequence where we see price essentially come back down, and we see price essentially trade this low in this London low. We then end up eventually seeing price consolidate for a bit, but then we end up taking our first trade. So after discovering higher time frame look, bullish SMT invalidated through our set piece yesterday, utilizing yesterday's data, and then also seeing the low get taken out and price clearly showcasing interest in lower through overnight price and through New York Open, I felt like it was appropriate to have that downside bias. We do eventually come down here. The first trade of the day that was taken was a short. And now if we go all the way back down and we look at the first trade of the day, pretty much what I end up posting as an idea is a 1 minute gap that I wanted to see go invert. Now, I will say with this trade right here, it wasn't the best gap entry, but I was so convicted in lower draw because of that higher time frame bias, because of overnight price being bearish, and because of the opening range move being bearish. All three components were lining up extremely one-sided. So for me, I felt it was very clear that we were going to see a move down lower. So the entry is not the best, but it's more so a draw aspect here that I more so wanted to take off a good retracement. Again, we don't get a gap off this trade here specifically, but we end up seeing price eventually come back down here. Unfortunately, the trade ends up going in the money initially, but then we eventually trail out of this position for a small gain. So about a 0.5 R in the green is what this trade ends up realizing at, right? So at this point, it wasn't like I was still not bearish because we got trailed out. All we were doing was seeking a retracement. The open initially was very wicky. We ended up seeing price trade very up and down, but I was still predominantly bearish. Then we ended up taking a second trade where it was a trade and where we went short off a 1 minute bullish gap go invert, right? And this is a proper entry model because we have a gap actually in the market, an inefficiency that we want to see price raid and we want to see price go look to disrespect. We eventually end up doing that after initially consolidating. We then end up taking the trade here with the stop loss essentially at the swing high of the retracement once we initially tapped the gap. We see price come down here. We take the entry. Unfortunately, if you look at my chart, the trade ends up stopping out. Now, Leto, why the hell would this trade stop out if we had all our components? Well, if you look at NQ here, we ended up taking out a London low session where we ended up seeing price also create a higher low in hindsight. But the more important thing is something I did not look at was a target of draw on the hourly that I had in mind initially, which was this hourly internal swing point, right? This wick that we ended up creating here at around 67.31, we ended up taking out on ES. And so for me, I should have been maybe a bit more weary with price there. However, I will say with this trade, despite anything, I, in my eyes, even in hindsight, do believe our bearish confluences overrode our bullish confluences here by a margin, by far. So for me to take a loss on this trade, this is a very proud losing trade. Yes, you heard that right. Lance, you took a loss. How are you happy about that? I'm happy because I followed my system. This is a trade that fit all my components, right? It fit everything. So that's pretty much that. We then end up coming back up here and seeking a move up higher. And so for me specifically, I felt, okay, ES took the low. Excuse me, my throat hurts. ES takes the low. NQ sweeps London lows. Then we see price come back up, and we see price essentially showcase large displacement, right? We see price put in a good low. We see price then shoot for a reversal back off the low. And in my head, I'm like, okay, range day. But then we see price print at a tremendous rate, where we end up seeing price essentially come back up here, and we see price predominantly really excel past these internal highs, past these PD arrays. So once we've kind of disregarded these PD arrays consecutively, I felt as if interest could potentially be higher now, because we had the higher low being put in. We had a good area of liquidity, which we put in. And again, two of the main components, chat, that we always talk about when it comes to identifying a market structure shift reversal, no matter any time frame, even like a session like this, is a significant low being put in, route one, and then a price action we're still looking to pick up. And we do both here. We see significant low being put in. We end up seeing price eventually come back up here and pick up at the same state, if not more aggressively than the slow. I will say I feel the best entry of the day, had I not been so bearish, would have been this 5-minute gap go invert. This is a textbook long had I not been bearish. But again, I'm not mad at my bias today. I felt like it was appropriate through higher time frame to be as bearish as I was. But again, this is by far the best trade of the day off this 5-minute gap go invert. So, Leto, what trade did you end up taking now? Well, the trade that we ended up taking was simply the initial take, which this trade ends up, I believe, realizing for a small grade or not, if not break even. We ended up going long off of a 1-minute gap go invert. It was also a bit after this 1-minute gap goes invert as well. This is a bullish gap that turned into a bearish inversion fair value gap, and we were simply looking to go long once this bearish inversion fair value gap gets disrespected. We ended up doing that there, slightly consolidating, but then we eventually came back up here, hit our break-even zone, which was an internal high, went break-even stops, but then eventually trailed out to 67.91. So the first trade was 0.5R, trailed out small green. The second trade was a -1R because it hit stop, and then the third trade was about a plus 7R or plus 0.7R. So doing the math, we were essentially break even the day at this point, right? Because we had two winners, but those were smaller than the losers because we had a small trail, didn't hit TP. And then so for me, I felt it was appropriate to maybe take one more trade. We took 3 trades at this point. The first trade was specifically first 2 trades, a short on ES, which went break even. The second trade, NQ, which stopped out. That was playing into our initial higher time frame bias. But then once we had recognized price action, and once we had recognized the lows that we put in and the market structure shift, we made the tactical adjustment. And this is why I think it's so important, chat. No matter how convicted you are to your bias, never blind yourself. Make sure you have the ability and the versatility to make those adjustments if you need. I was outright wrong. I was fucking wrong about my bias this morning. Wrong. But yet I'm still green. Why? Because I didn't marry it. I didn't blind myself. I simply made the adjustment when price was there and price was clear in terms of what it wanted to do. Then we eventually ended up taking our final trade, which was an entry based off 2 1-minute gaps. I've been using that a bit more the past couple of days. 1-minute gap here, 1-minute gap here. I wanted to see 2 1-minute gaps get disrespected. Two 1-minute bearish gaps get disrespected and go invert. Once we ended up doing that, you see me mention I am long. We take our entry. Our break even is the high of day. Our stop loss is essentially the swing low of the move here on the retrace. And then we eventually end up seeing price hit that break even zone. I go break even stops, still a bit up and down, but then eventually we smash, take profit. Here is the P&L card for the session, up 26K on Tradecopia, not including my other accounts. Total sum together around $41,000 on the trading day, where I initially had a losing trade, where I initially was right on the day, and where I initially had the wrong bias. Today's a day where I'm very proud about, because today's a day where we had adversity and we did not slip up. We didn't get greedy. We didn't get fearful. We didn't get doubtful. We didn't do anything stupid. We had our wrong bias off the get-go, and we took a loss, and we simply stuck to it. That's it. That's the trading day. Very proud of this. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm going to catch you guys in the next one.